G'day YouTube, Warbles on a lot here with part 2 of my response to your questions await your answers for Equals Project channel. And in part 1 we got through the first 10 of the 24 questions, so here's question 11. Dear God, why do you exist? What's your purpose? Well, it's like this, Munchkin. If one of the cells in your left little toe was to ask your frontal lobes, "Oi, consciousness, why do you exist? What is your purpose?" How could your consciousness explain to the cell in your left little toe what the purpose of universal consciousness was just for your organism? Well, that's effectively what you're doing when, as one Homo sapiens sapiens, the monkey who thinks it thinks, you expect another Homo sapiens sapiens to answer for the collective conscious awareness of all the life in the universe as to what it's doing. The answer is, try not to stub my toe. Yeah? Aiming to juggle and organise and balance everything for the greatest good, for the greatest number of individual consciousness within the collective. So that each little termite in the hive mind is fed and watered and sheltered and feels safe. That's pretty much what the collective conscious awareness of the universe is trying to achieve. Yeah? Central guidance. And it's all being done by free will. So it's not a top-down hierarchical, you will do this. It's more a case of, well, it'd be good if you did this, but there's all these other options on the playing board, and you can fuck it up if you want to. As it says in the Messiah's Handbook, Reminders for the Advanced Soul, and there are excerpts from that printed in the book called Illusions, written by Richard Bach. It says, the world is your exercise book, the pages on which you do your sums. You are also free to write nonsense or lies or to tear the pages. Question 12. Why do you allow less than helpful things happen to, quote, good people? Well, less than helpful things in whose estimation? In order to make that judgment, you have to know at least 7 generations of background leading up to that cusp in the time flow, and you've got to have an extrapolation 7 generations down the track to see where it's leading to know whether it is a less than helpful thing. You have to have an omniscient vision to understand what's going on. And as far as I can understand it, every human dies when they are at their spiritual peak. The immortal soul of the products of conception that are sucked out with a vacuum cleaner and flushed away because it was the result of a rape. That immortal soul apparently had no good options open. So therefore they die before they get to be much bigger than a blastocyst. That was a less than helpful thing, wasn't it? And it resulted out of other people exercising their free will. You can't actually blame the creator of the universe for the actions of individuals that you haven't bothered paying attention to backtracking and figuring out what they're up to. Again, let's look at the Messiah's Handbook, Reminders for the Advanced Soul, to be found in Illusions by Richard Bach, where it says, the mark of your ignorance lies in the depth of your belief in injustice and tragedy. What the caterpillar calls the end of the world, the is calls a butterfly. See? Question 13. How low will the human population need to fall and how fast to reach a level which is sustainable? What level of technology will society retain afterwards? If I wanted to, I could refuse to answer this question because I asked it. Let's imagine a Class X solar flare, real big one. As the plasma and ionised hydrogen hits the Earth's magnetic field, it compresses the magnetic field. So there's a situation where we've got the world's largest ever electric distribution grid covering the planet with wires. and they're rotating at 900 miles an hour at the equator. And rotating underneath an ever-strengthening magnetic field, they become direct current generators, and they feed a power pulse backwards into the transformers, and it melts the copper wire off the iron cores. The National Academy of Science in America got the National Air and Space Academy to write a report which was presented to Congress, which said they'd have 15 minutes warning. It would take 90 seconds to crash the grid globally. There's 72 hours medical care in the cities, because that's how long there is for fuel for the backup generator at the hospital. There's 30 days coal stockpiled on top of the ground. All the coal seams are below water table level, and there are electric pumps to pump out the coal mines. When you look at how a city goes with no electricity, a modern city, when you look at the manufacturing, food distribution supply, energy distribution supply, I think the world population would drop by 50% per month for 6 months if the global electric grid was crashed tomorrow. I think at the end of a year it would have dropped 50% again on what it is at the end of the 6 months. And I think whoever's alive at the end of the first year is going to have an enormous amount of technology that they can salvage, and if they can teach their grandchildren how to be a blacksmith, to build a plough, to drag behind a horse, if they've kept contact with the horses, then they may be able to reach a medieval feudal stage. Probably the ones who attempt to live in affiliative fraternity where nobody owns anything and everything is shared, they will do the best. Where I sit, and I'm the fool on the hill. Question 14. What does it indicate, dear God, when I have no questions because life appears to make perfect sense to me? Once more, I don't have to answer this because I asked that question. I can answer with a cliche: a prune is a plum which has thought for too long. A pretty wrinkled old prune. But I could also say that maybe I'm not as silly as I look. There are two question 15s. The first one is, why do you allow horrible things to happen to me when I try so hard? Well, to answer that, I'd have to know what you're trying to do. I mean, Hitler tried really hard, and horrible things happened to him. But he did. He tried really hard. He worked his arse off at it, but it was a stupid project. Have you ever stepped back and asked yourself, what is the point? Maybe you're trying really hard to be selfish, and that's supposed to be hard. It's supposed to go wrong being selfish. It never works. If you were to try hard being selfless, that's often much easier. Second version of question 15. WTF were you thinking? Well, I was thinking life is a good choice, and free will is the fairest possible way to regulate it. Question 16. If you could have your portrait painted by any painter in history, to whom would you give the commission? What part of Gestalt-Consciousness do you not understand? You cannot paint the face of a hive-mind. If you really want to have a go at it, the Hubble Space Telescope would have been pretty good. Get all of the astrophotographs that have ever been taken, display them on a flat wall so that you've got coverage of 360 degrees and 360 degrees, and you've got colour photographs of the observable universe at maximum magnification, and with variation of colour spectrums if you really want to. That'll be your very best go at painting the face of the Creator. Why do you think it says in the Mosaic Commandments, thou shalt not worship graven images? You cannot engrave the face of God on a rock or paint it on a parchment. You can't depict the face of a hive mind. I can't put it any clearer than that. 17. Is Sufism compatible with Christianity? If so, how? Sufism is a breed of Islam. Islam was the written down interpretations of Muhammad. Muhammad said, I come in a long line of prophets. I follow in their footsteps. You must obey their teachings. Muhammad told the Sufis they have to obey the 10 Commandments, the Mosaic laws. He said they have to obey the teachings of the Prophet Jesus. What part of Judeo-Christianity and Islam being a single continuous God theory do you not stumble? I'll also say that Constantine, when he made the Roman army into Christians, and Augustine, when he said that thou shalt not kill, was bullshit because of his just war philosophy, they were both entirely wrong, and Muhammad swallowed that holus bolus 300 years later when he was making his religious revelation. So, there you go, perfectly compatible. In fact, in the OASP, the book of God theory which I subscribe to, in the glossary, Christians, a brotherhood of warriors. They were named Christians in derision by the Hebrews. One who rushes into a multitude of rioters and with a sword enforces peace is a true Christian. A people whose faith is in arms and standing armies. Bracket. The following words are synonymous. Brahma, Buddha, Christ, Christ, Baal, Ashtoth, Dagon, Vishnu, Ashdod, knowledge, wisdom, Krishna, light, Po, Te-In, Wa, Manitou, and in fact a score of others. I would have to say that the Jews, the Christians and the Muslims all qualify as a brotherhood of warriors. One who with a sword rushes into a crowd of rioters to enforce peace is a true Christian, Jew, Muslim. What are mosquitoes good for? Well, apart from the fact that their eggs feed a lot of fish and a lot of frog larvae, tadpoles, mosquitoes carry diseases that stop people from overpopulating on a local scale. Mosquitoes are part of the biosphere. The more life occupies a space, the more life can occupy the space. And some species keep other species in check. Mosquitoes are good. 19. Which of those things I regret were truly my fault, and when I was the victim of something someone else should regret? Well, pretty much for the first 7 years, you'll accept anything that you are told by the people that you respect. For the next 7 years, you will ask questions and you'll accept some of the answers. By the time you're 14, you are spiritually responsible for your decisions because you know the difference between right and wrong. However, the fact that you've been guided by bullshit that's been plugged into your head by people who didn't care or didn't know any better means that you're not actually responsible for stuff that you've been taught was right, turns out to be wrong. Eventually, you are supposed to wake up to yourself. I think if you haven't figured it out by about 42 to 49, you might be ready for the compost heap. 20. Are you separate from us, part of us, or something else? If so, what? In other words, are you transcendent or immanent? The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Everything alive is the parts. The Creator is the synchronistic whole. 21. How and why were we not worth talking to in some respectful way? What makes you think that you were not respected and spoken to? When? Everybody has the same connection to the Creator that everybody else has. It's called your conscience. Switch on. Pay attention. It's not that difficult. 22. Dear God, please explain the physical laws of the universe. For example, what is dark matter? Dark matter is kind of like vortexia, the life force spirit energy of the universe, the collective conscious awareness. There's so much of it that if you take the missing mass of the universe and multiply by the speed of light squared, you come up with the amount of dark energy it takes to create the gravity, which is clumping the galaxies together. That was pretty good in 1996 when I wrote and published it. 1998, Brian Schmidt came up with observational evidence that the universe is continuing to expand despite the gravity. There is some force that is the opposite of gravity. It is so powerful that there's enough of it in my left nostril to boil all the water and all the oceans of the whole planet in about 10 seconds flat. I would suggest to you that dark energy is the collective conscious awareness, the life force spirit energy of the Creator. There's a lot of it out there. There's enough energy to run any sort of God theory you want to choose to imagine. If you want the Creator of the universe to be aware of the whole life of every sparrow, there's enough energy to do it. Question 23, why? Answer to question 23, why not? Question 24, do you exist? Caps locked, you see. Had to shout it. And the answer is, of course. Absolutely. It is self-evident. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Cosmic scoreboard effect always wins. Whatever you put out there, it comes back to you. The karma laws. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And if you do horrible shit, then horrible shit will happen to you. Cast your bread upon the waters and you'll never be hungry. The level of observable synchronicity and benevolent coincidence which happens in the life of any human who pays attention is immeasurably greater than that predicted by random cascading chaotic recombinant chance hypotheses. And the really funny thing is the people who don't want to believe in an omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, competent, benevolent God, they are the ones who are the strongest possible supporters of a really intrusive national security agency and homeland insecurity organisation and intrusive scrutiny and surveillance, because they want there to be some godlike force or machine out there keeping track of the bad guys, because they honestly believe that you can get away with anything. Whereas even Chaucer knew 600 years ago, Modre will out. Middle English translates as murder will be found out. You can't get away with bad shit. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. I hope that helped. See you later, Kathy. Ciao.